All right, happy to get some insight on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, the bowl-bound Rutgers Scarlet Knights from Bobby Deren. He covers Rutgers for our great Rutgers site at 24/7 Sports, Scarlet Nation. Bobby, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it as always.
Yeah, we got some fun things to talk about with Rutgers, with their bowl-bound football team. Of course, basketball with these two sensational freshmen. But let's start with football, of course, with Illinois heading out there. They're going bowling for the third time in 4 years under Greg Schiano. It's amazing. Out of 13 bowl games in Rutgers history, 9 are under Greg Schiano. So let's start big picture. What has made Greg Schiano, this time 2.0, what has made him the guy to have success at Rutgers? What has made him such a good fit there?
Well, he kind of knows the lay of the land here. It's a tough place to win at Rutgers, and he's really turned it into a developmental program, finding these guys that aren't the 4 and 5 stars with the talent, can develop and can kind of keep them here. He's kept a lot of players this year that could have made more money elsewhere in NIL, and he's just built a culture that's very unique. And guys buy into the system, and he left, and you saw the program just really spiral downward, and he's brought it back, and he said it's different place. It's not like a place that you can just add in a new coach and continue a winning program, and he's really established his own culture, and he's he recruits. He doesn't follow all the rankings, so to speak, and he really can't. With the NIL world, he can't afford to go out and buy the 4 or 5 stars like some programs can. So he has to really do his due diligence and find those under the radar guys. And ironically, some of the best guys that he's had in this second run were guys that he got in a 3-week run. He took over in December of 2019, and he got Tyreen Powell, Max Melton, Kyle Monangai in those 3 weeks, just to name a few. So it's quite, and those were guys that weren't, Tyreen Powell was committed to Virginia Tech, but you had guys like Robert Longer being committed to Temple. Kyle Monangai wasn't committed, had one other big offer from California, and, he turned into one of the best rushers in the country. So it's that due diligence that really helped them find guys and develop them.
Well, I know they were excited this year just to get the heck out of the Big Ten East, right? And they took advantage of that early on, 4-0 start. But then they lose 4 in a row, Bobby. But then they bounce back. Like beating a Minnesota team that was on a 4-game winning streak was impressive. And just beating Illinois. So what's kind of led to the roller coaster this year, but ultimately to a team that's fighting for a really good bowl game?
Well, they've really been decimated by injuries on the defensive end, and you see that because Greg Schiano's teams typically rely on the defense. It's usually not a very high-powered, exciting offense. The offense has started to come alive, but the 4-game losing streak, it was really defense. Teams were throwing for 300 yards. They were going for over 500 yards in games against them, which is uncharacteristic. But in that stretch, they had 7 of 11 starters that were either out or playing hurt. So they had the bye week before Minnesota, and guys started to get a little healthier, and you saw the difference the last couple of weeks. The defense is starting to return to what it was. Last year, finished ranked 16th in the nation, only lost a few starters. So you would think, you still have a formidable unit, but a lot of those guys were playing less than 100%. You had new guys playing for the first time. They're kind of wide-eyed and just really not used to it. So I think that 4-game losing streak was really attributed to the defense just, not playing up to snuff. And it had to do with a lot with injuries. So you're seeing guys get healthier. And this team, ironically, is starting to peak now. Last 3 years, they finished the season 1-11 through the last 4 games. Now, you had the Penn States in there, but just to put it in perspective, they finished the last 3 seasons against Maryland. The combined score was 119-40. And Rutgers just kind of limped to the finish line. Now you saw them win by 2 touchdowns last week against Maryland. Not the last game of the season, but a different vibe, different tenor altogether. And the team is getting healthier as the season goes on, ironically.
There haven't been many more productive backs in the Big Ten the last 2 years than Kyle Monangai. There might be guys that, flash a little bit more, but man, this guy is just a workhorse. What has made him so good in this conference and in a Rutgers offense that, as you know, like the passing game starting to come on a little bit, but it hasn't been a strength. So what has made him so good there?
I mean, he's just a tough runner, and he shared the backfield in high school at Don Bosco with Jalen Berger, 4-star who came out and he's been everywhere, I think, in college now. And he was the less touted of the two. And, he only had an offer from California outside of Rutgers is the only, Power 5, Power 4 now offer. It was like in a lot of group of 5, a lot of FCS schools, and nobody wants to take a chance on him. He's a smaller guy, but he runs with such a low center of gravity. He's tough. He's strong as an ox. He has great vision. He'll bounce plays out. He'll find cutback lanes. And he's a guy that just wears defenses down. He punishes guys, and it seems like he gets stronger as the game goes on. His running style, he's tough to tackle. He can be elusive, and he's really put it all together. He's the best back that Rutgers has had since Ray Rice. And, they've only had one 1,000-yard rusher since Ray in the 2012 season with Jawan Jameson. But, nonetheless, Kyle has just been, he's just been the heart and soul of this team, and he's not playing at 100%. He's just toughs it out. He's a tough kid. The game that he didn't play against Minnesota, he wanted to play. They had to kind of pull him out and say, look, shut it down for a week. So just a tough runner. When you watch him, you just go, wow, he does everything.
My line when I've been on these podcasts talking about like a Luke Altmaier has been, well, before him and Tommy DeVito, Illinois went in the transfer portal. But my line has been that outside of Rutgers, Illinois had the worst quarterback situation maybe in all the Power 5, right? Rutgers has really struggled at this position, but they go and get a guy who's got a lot of Big Ten experience in Athan Kaliakmanis. What has he brought to that position that has been such a struggle for them?
Well, he's brought consistency, and Rutgers has really struggled with guys completing just average passes that, you take for granted as a Big Ten quarterback. Kirk Soraka coached him at Minnesota as the OC in 2022. He started 5 games there. And then last year, Soraka came to Rutgers, and you saw kind of a downturn for Kaliakmanis at Minnesota. And he started out the season more as like a game manager. They didn't ask him to do too much. And these last few games, he's starting to make the big throws. He's throwing under pressure. I had critiqued him often for not being able to make throws under pressure. And he was making them last week. And he's really started to evolve as a quarterback. And for Rutgers, the bar was pretty low previously. Last year you're watching games, they're playing Iowa, and they're in Iowa territory and running the ball on 3rd and 8. That gives you just a hint of the confidence or lack thereof that they had in former quarterback Gavin Wimsatt. So getting Kaliakmanis going, he's got better receivers this year too, Jeremy. Dymere Miller transferred in as the FCS leading receiver at Monmouth. He's on pace to have as many catches as any Rutgers receiver since Mohamed Sanu caught 115 in 2011. So you got some big receivers on the end. Ian Strong was dominant last week. Maryland had no answers, 7 catches, 86 yards, had 2 penalties, drew 2 penalties. One was in the end zone, led to a touchdown. So, Kaliakmanis is just chucking it up. He's got 6'6" guys on the corners there, and he's just, throwing the ball downfield, saying, go get it, big guy. And they're doing a good job of that. But it's been a balance, and it's finally come together because it's been a struggle. Like you said, the struggles there, similar to what Illinois had. And this is finally the first semblance of a passing offense in a while. Last time Rutgers had a 2,000-yard passer was 2015. So, you kind of take for granted, well, he'll throw for 2,000 yards, not at Rutgers.
Yeah. No, Kaliakmanis has gotten better. I've seen him the last couple of years at Minnesota. He's certainly gotten better, and it gives him some competency at that position to give him some balance. You mentioned the receivers. What's his offensive line like in front of him? I know their left tackle is pretty dang good.
Yeah, Holland Pierce, he's a 6'9" guy. He's a 4-year starter. He's kind of the anchor. They lost their second-best lineman at Brian Felter earlier in the season, but been able to compensate. And Greg brought in Pat Flaherty from he was with the New York Giants for years, won 2 Super Bowls there. And he's really gotten the most out of an offensive line that might not be the most talented, might not be the most, you don't look at them and say, wow, these are 4 or 5-star guys, but he's gotten, everything out of that group. And, they've had to replace some guys this year because of injury, and it's worked. And he's just been a tremendous asset. And like I said, Holland Pierce will be a draft pick this year, but I'm not sure any of the other guys are, going to get drafted. They're just solid players, and they've really gotten the most out of those players.
As you said earlier, it's kind of been up and down with the defense when they had some injury issues, gave up 35 plus, I think, in 3 straight games. But other than that, it's been 23 and under for all the other games. So what are the strengths of this defense, and what has hurt them when they have had those struggles?
Well, one of the biggest problems was the linebacker position. Coming into this season, Tyreen Powell and Mohamed Toure, both NFL draft prospects. Toure goes down with an ACL in the beginning of the year. Powell is coming back from an Achilles and a wrist injury, so he's not 100%. So you have two younger guys playing back there who, didn't have a feel for it, didn't really, have the experience to rely on. So that second level suffered. Now Powell is back playing the mic, so it makes it easier. They play two linebackers and three safeties. So Dario Jabome, a Canadian kid, is really playing well now because he doesn't have to make all the calls at the mic and whatnot. Tyreen Powell just changes the defense. He's a 6'5", 240-pound athletic guy. Last week against Maryland, one play, he basically rushes the quarterback and puts his hand up and forces an errant throw. And it kind of just misses a touchdown, turns a touchdown into a field goal, and basically changes, little plays like that. They don't go down in the stat book, but they come up big.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's this game mean for Rutgers, Bobby? Because I know this isn't a game that outside is going to get a lot. It's 11 o'clock on Peacock, but for these two teams that are trying to climb this Big Ten ladder, this game's pretty important for both sides, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it's senior day. It's going to be an emotional day for these guys. A lot of these guys came to Rutgers when Greg Schiano was selling the vision. There's nothing there. You know how old and how the old Rutgers was. It was, so a lot of the guys really believed it. So it's going to be a big day for a lot of these guys. It's going out. The Tyreen Powells I mentioned, Robert Longerby, a lot of those guys that came in. Kyle Monangai, he's only got a couple games left. So it's going to be a big emotional game. And now, I found out last night the Citrus Bowl is coming in there, and it's the second week they're watching Illinois. But if Rutgers can win this game, they tie with Illinois in that logjam up at the Big Ten. If you have 4 college football playoff teams, it's up for grabs. You know what I mean? So if you go through the schedule, there's a lot to play for in terms of a decent bowl game. Rutgers fans in the beginning, when they made the bowl game, they just wanted anything but the quick lane, or what is it now? The game above sports bowl, the Detroit Bowl, we'll call it. Yeah. So I think, the possibility of going to a upper tier bowl game, not maybe an upper tier, but, a decent one. They've been to the Pinstripe Bowl multiple times. People are kind of over that. Yeah. And bowl games, they're not the norm anymore because, after Greg Schiano left, there was a big bowl drought. 2014 was the last time, and they slipped into the Gator Bowl in 21 when Texas A&M had to bow out. They were 5-7, so the APR got them in. So that was kind of like, an asterisk next to that bowl game. Then, Pinstripe Bowl last year, they beat Miami. And so their fans are kind of excited about that. And it's kind of anything but the Detroit Bowl. So they're playing for that. And, some of the guys, too, who've been hurt are playing for their draft stock because, the earlier film, it isn't their true self, and it's tough to sell that to scouts sometimes. Well, I was hurt, and, a lot of teams, all right, whatever. But the last few games, if they can finish strong, they're playing for a chance to play on Sundays.
Yeah, listen, Indiana deserves all the, publicity they're getting with what Cignetti is doing, but these are kind of really good stories, right? Like Bielema and Schiano seem to have a lot of similarities. Had great success when they're in their 30s as head coaches and at huge programs, and then go to some bigger jobs, had some failure, come back and go back to their home states and rejuvenate this thing. These are similar programs. They're kind of built on the same things you're talking about, like physicality, toughness, dependability. They don't turn it over a lot. They don't commit a lot of penalties. And they don't have the huge NIL budget. So it's fun to see these two teams kind of clash, Bobby.
Yeah, and you said it, the NIL is they're piecing it together. They're shoestringing this thing together. And guys are staying because they believe in the system. And a guy like Holland Pierce, left tackle, you go on the open market as a 3-year starting left tackle, you're going to get paid. Now, I'm not saying that Rutgers didn't get him NIL, but I'm sure on the open market, he would have seen a bigger payday, but opted to stay there because of, how they've developed him, the belief in him, the belief that he can get them into camps. Last year, Rutgers had 7 undrafted guys get into camps, and a few of them stuck with teams. Just that, and they weren't, all-world guys. So the fact that he can sell that to them too, you stay here, you're going to get a chance. A backup tight end is playing with 2 catches last year, is on an NFL practice squad. So, he can kind of sell that to guys too. And it really has done a masterful job considering there wasn't much NIL to work with at all.
Yeah. So as you look at this matchup from the Rutgers perspective, what's their keys to protecting home field? Last I saw, Illinois is now a 1-point favorite after Rutgers opened up as a 1-point favorite. So true toss-up game here. What do you think are the keys to Rutgers succeeding against Illinois?
When Rutgers has failed this year, they failed to get pressure on the quarterback, and they don't have a dynamic pass rusher on the edge. I mentioned Muhammad Toure, linebacker. He's their best pass rusher. He goes down on third downs as a rush end. He was out. Wesley Bailey, another starter, is out for the year. In spring practice, Renee Conga, another guy he jumped in the portal, went to Louisville. Aaron Lewis has been banged up. So midseason, they're on 5th and 6th defensive ends. So they're not, Aaron Lewis came back, so they're getting a little healthier, but they don't have that prolific guy. So they've been dialing up pressure in a lot of different ways and scheming things up. And I think they're going to have to do that because if they're going to give Altmaier time, I think he'll pick them apart. But I think the key for them is to getting pressure and consistent pressure and stopping those big plays. And in those games that Rutgers was losing, they were giving up chunk plays. The tackling was off, bad angles. I think if they give him time and he starts connecting on passes, it could be real dangerous. In that UCLA game, they let the kid throw 32 of 38. He looked like a Heisman Trophy guy. And I'm like, wait, what's this, Garbers? Who's this guy? So, and Altmaier's a better quarterback than him. So if they let him get going, I think that will really hurt Rutgers. And in the same token, they're going to have to get Kaliakmanis going in the passing game. He's not going to have to throw for 300-400 yards, but he's going to have to be consistent, make those throws, and they're going to have to find a way to keep the pressure off him too.
All right, I got to ask you about basketball. How can I not ask you about Rutgers basketball? I love what Steve Pikiell has done, but this is taking it to another level. Because when Illinois basketball heads to Rutgers in February, I was telling you this before, there are going to be a lot of NBA scouts there because there's potentially 4 one-and-dones between these two teams. I know Rutgers hasn't been tested yet, but Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, they got Notre Dame, Alabama coming up next week. Illinois just saw how good Alabama is. What's the buzz around Rutgers basketball right now?
There's a lot of buzz because Harper and Bailey are the real deal. I mean, you watch them. Ace Bailey hit a shot last night. I was at the game, and he hit a turnaround in front of 2 guys from 19 feet. And it was like a layup for him. It was just like one of those shots where you go, you don't see guys make those. But the issue is they don't have a real strong supporting cast. If you ask me who their third best player was, I couldn't tell you. So their defense, Steve Pikiell is usually that gritty, tough, defensive 45-point, 44-point games. You know what I mean? For a team sometimes. And now you got 2 guys combining for that. But they don't have the same type of defense as they do. So it's a different dynamic. Now, those 2 guys are exciting and they're going to score points. Can the supporting cast, help them out? That's going to be the key to the season because, as good as they are, they can't carry, the whole team without some help. And defensively, they're giving up a lot of points. Mid-major guys, some of these mid-major guys scoring 20, 30 points a game on them. So what's the Big Ten guys going to do?
Just hoping one of them gets to my Chicago Bowl somehow, Bobby. So we'll see if that can happen. But Bobby Deren, thanks for the insight on Rutgers. I'll see you out there in Piscataway on Saturday to experience the best PA system in the Big Ten. That is for sure. Big game between Rutgers and Illinois. Thank you, Bobby.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy.